Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
Good morning, I'm John Tucker.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Here are the stories we're following today.
And Karen, let's start with the latest on the war in Ukraine. President Volodymyr Zelenskiy says he plans to meet with President Trump in the coming days, signaling optimism about reaching a peace deal to end Russia's almost four-year war. This is a post on X. Zelenskiy writing, quote, "A lot could be decided before the new year." The key post reported earlier that Zelenskiy is expected to travel to Florida, where President Trump is spending the Christmas break, as soon as Sunday. Kyiv and Washington are seeking to align on a 20-point peace plan to present to Russian President Vladimir Putin, including the provision of strong security guarantees modeled on NATO's Article 5 and a global post-war development program for Ukraine.
Well, let's stay with geopolitics here, John. The U.S. launched a military strike in Nigeria against Islamic State targets in a security and intelligence collaboration with the African nation's government, which has been struggling to contain increasing levels of terrorist attacks in parts of the country. President Trump said he directed American forces to carry out a powerful and deadly strike against ISIS. Nigeria's Foreign Affairs Ministry confirmed the precision hits on terrorist targets and said it remains engaged with international partners, including the U.S., to address the, quote, persistent threat of terrorism and violent extremism.
And a sanctioned oil tanker pursued by U.S. forces turned away from Venezuela and retreated out into the Atlantic as the Trump administration continues a blockade, piling pressure in Caracas. Sources are telling Bloomberg the Coast Guard encountered the ship Bella 1 amid bad weather near Barbados on Sunday and then instructed the tanker to move to calmer waters for safe boarding. The ship instead sailed toward the Atlantic Ocean. The tanker was not hauling oil at the time it turned away from Venezuela.
Well, on that news here, John, oil is headed for the biggest weekly gain since late October. Global benchmark Brent trading above $62 a barrel, more than 3% higher this week. West Texas Intermediate is $58.49 a barrel.
And with those escalating geopolitical tensions, Karen, gold and silver jumped to all-time highs. Platinum also hit a record. Spot gold rose as much as 1.2% to peak above $4,530 an ounce. And spot silver advanced for a fifth straight session, climbing as much as 4.6% to cross $75 an ounce for the first time. The white metal's recent advance has been buoyed by speculative inflows and lingering supply dislocations across major trading hubs following an historic short squeeze in October. And the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index, this is a key gauge of the U.S. currency strength, that was down 0.8% for the week, its biggest drop since June.
Meanwhile, John, China criticized the U.S. for what it said was trying to hurt Beijing's ties with India, calling its approach, quote, irresponsible. Foreign Ministry spokesman Lin Jane said a recent report by the Pentagon distorts China's defense policy, sows discord between China and other countries, and aims to find a pretext for the U.S. to perpetuate its own military hegemony. Lin made the remarks when asked about the report, which said China may use an easing of tensions with India to block improved ties between Washington and New Delhi.
And meanwhile, Karen, Japan's industry ministry is set to nearly quadruple its budgeted support for cutting-edge semiconductors and artificial intelligence development to about $7.9 billion. This is for the fiscal year that starts in April. Overall, the Ministry of Economy, Trade, and Industry's budget rose by about 50% from the previous year, and this is all largely due to the jump in chips and AI spending. The jump in chips and AI spending comes at a time when Japan is trying to strengthen its capacity in frontier technology as the U.S. and China race ahead as the world's two largest economies continue to remain on tense terms despite a lull in their trade war. Japan is also trying to secure better supply chain access for key technologies.
Well, John, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement summoned Afghans residing in the U.S. to present their documents during the holiday season, marking the latest effort by the Trump administration to crack down on migrants from the Asian nation. Sources tell Bloomberg that ICE is seeking appointments for a scheduled report check-in, with one requesting such a meeting on Christmas Day and another asking for one on New Year's Day. The immigration agency has arrested migrants who appear at its offices in response to such formal requests, including those attending interviews use for their green cards.
And turning to the markets, stocks extended the year-end rally in thin trading. It was driven by optimism over economic growth and expectations for improved corporate earnings. Robert Teeter, the chief investment strategist at Silvercrest Asset Management, is looking ahead to 2026.
So one of the themes that we've seen has been that companies have been very slow to hire. You've had a relatively soft labor market. That's not great from a consumer standpoint, but so far it seems to be pretty great from an earnings standpoint. And that is a sign that some of these AI benefits are coming into play. You're hearing more and more CEOs talking about keeping headcount flat while revenues are rising. And so that's good for the earnings picture. Again, not so great for the consumer picture. Although payrolls are still expanding, albeit slowly, and wages are still expanding, also albeit slowly. So we're not in a spot where we're fearful of a recession.
Yeah, that's Robert Teeter, the chief investment strategist at Silvercrest Asset Management. Overseas, the MSCI All Country World Index, that edged higher in Asian trading, set for a seventh day of gains, with the regional gauge climbing 0.2%. Now, Australia, Hong Kong, and several other regional markets remain shut for the holidays. And Bloomberg's index of the dollar held near the lowest since October.
Let's go to company news here, John. NVIDIA agreed to a licensing deal with artificial intelligence startup Grok, furthering its investments in companies connected to the AI boom and gaining the right to add a new type of technology to its products. The world's largest publicly traded company has paid for the right to use Grok's technology and will integrate its chip design into future products. Some of the startup's executives are leaving to join NVIDIA to help with that effort, the company said, and Grok will continue as an independent company with a new chief executive.
And Karen, Goldman Sachs is warning clients about an outside law firm data breach. Let's get more on this story this morning from Bloomberg's Erica Herskowitz.
The banking giant says the data of some investors may have been exposed in a breach at one of the bank's law firms. Goldman was informed of the cybersecurity incident by Fried, Frank, Harris, Shriver, and Jacobson, which serves as outside counsel to many of its alternative funds. The law firm says its network is now secure, the vulnerability has been corrected, and any exposed data is unlikely to be used improperly. Goldman says its own systems were not impacted by the breach. Erica Herskowitz, Bloomberg Radio.
Erica, thank you. Hundreds of flights have been canceled at New York's major airports as a winter storm descends on the city and neighboring regions. At least 400 international and domestic flights have been canceled and many delayed, according to FlightAware, an airline tracking service. New York's LaGuardia and John F. Kennedy airports, as well as nearby Newark, were among the hardest hit. Let me give more details with Bloomberg meteorologist Craig Allen.
It looks like the heaviest snowfall is going to come on down through central New York State, cut across Interstate I-81 and across 87, come down to about I-80, which runs through the northeast section of Pennsylvania and northern New Jersey and over towards New York City. Even New Jersey, right along the coast and portions of Long Island, could wind up with more than half a foot of snow.
And Bloomberg meteorologist Craig Allen says heavy snow is expected to start falling in New York City and across Long Island this afternoon, right through tomorrow. Time now for a look at some of the other stories making news in New York and around the world. And for that, we're joined by Bloomberg's Michael Barr. Michael, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. In Southern California, another powerful storm system could cause more flooding and mudslides. Officials issued evacuation warnings in mountain towns. The region experienced one of the wettest Christmases in years, increasing the risk of debris flows in areas scorched by wildfires in January. Governor Gavin Newsom has declared a state of emergency in 6 counties. Firefighters in Ventura County had to lift someone out of the water from the bridge over the Ventura River. Captain Anthony McHale is with the Ventura County Fire Department.
We do what's called a flying Stokes operation. Lifted the victim up off the river bottom and onto the roadway. It was a very successful operation, and fortunately was a good outcome. He's uninjured.
Heavy rain and gusty winds were blamed for at least 2 deaths on Christmas Eve, including a Sacramento sheriff's deputy who died in what appeared to be a weather-related crash. There's more fallout from PG&E's city-wide holiday outages. San Francisco Mayor Daniel Lurie is calling on the utility to lower its rates.
We need more from PG&E. We need to make sure that there are no future blackouts. We need to know that their infrastructure is sound.
Mayor Lurie says many residents lost food and freezers when the power went out. The one-time girlfriend of Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, is back in the spotlight with a public release of investigative records that led to her 2021 sex trafficking conviction. Among items unsealed are the grand jury transcripts of testimony that led to her indictment. 2 weeks ago, she asked a federal judge to free her from prison, claiming she was unjustly convicted. The public release of investigative materials brings fresh light to the evidence against her. Pope Leo gave his first Christmas Day message.
Merry Christmas. May the peace of Christ reign in your hearts and in your families.
The Pope urged the faithful to shed indifferences toward those who are suffering. In New York City, Timothy Cardinal Dolan, who is retiring, presided over his last Christmas service after 16 years of service to the largest Catholic archdiocese in America. Global news 24 hours a day and whenever you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Michael Barr, and this is Bloomberg. Karen.
All right, Michael Barr, thank you. Time now for a Bloomberg Sports Update. Here's Dan Schwartzman.
3 NFL games on the Christmas schedules. The Lions are officially eliminated from playoff contention, falling to the Vikings 23-10. Broncos stay in contention to win the AFC West with a 20-13 win over the Chiefs, while the Cowboys knock off the Commanders 30-23. NBA with 5 marquee matchups on Christmas. The Thunder lose just their 5th game of the season, falling to the Spurs 117-102. Knicks a comeback win over the Cavs 126-124. The Rockets dominate the Lakers 117-96. Warriors knock off the Mavericks 126-116, while the Nuggets get a monster triple-double from Nikola Jokic, 56 points, 16 rebounds, and 15 assists in a 142-138 overtime win over the Timberwolves. That's your Bloomberg Sports Update.
Stay with us. More from Bloomberg Daybreak coming up after this.
Coast to coast on Bloomberg Radio, nationwide on Sirius XM, and around the world on Bloomberg.com and the Bloomberg Business app. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
And it's now 5:14 on Wall Street. Good morning, I'm John Tucker. This is Bloomberg Daybreak. Just to recap our top story, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskiy says he plans to meet with President Donald Trump in, quote, the coming days. Let's go into more depth on this story this morning. We're joined by Bloomberg's Roz Krasny. Roz, thanks for being with us this morning. Does this signal any significant degree of optimism into ending the war?
Well, it's always hard to tell as we approach the 4-year mark of this Russian-Ukraine war, but it does seem like there's some new urgency on the part of Zelenskiy and certainly on the part of the U.S. negotiators to get something done. Zelenskiy talked today about potential for big movement before the new year, so that is certainly a little bit optimistic looking. And the word that we're getting from our sources in Ukraine, from other people, is that Zelenskiy could meet with Trump as soon as Sunday. So we know that Donald Trump certainly likes to make announcements around signature dates. So something before the end of the year would certainly be a possibility. But the big X factor in this, of course, is what will Russia do? How will they respond, if at all?
Well, Zelensky met with Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. I think it was yesterday, Christmas Day. What came out of that with the 2 U.S. envoys?
Yeah, so he spoke with Witkoff and Kushner for almost an hour. He said everybody's he's in Kyiv, but the whole U.S. negotiating team is down in Florida. They spoke for an hour, and he came out just sounding optimistic. I don't think we have any specific details on that, but all the U.S. and Ukrainian negotiators are kind of coalescing around what's been described as a 20-point plan that includes post-war security guarantees for Ukraine, an economic redevelopment plan, even how the big Ukrainian nuclear power plant may be run after hostilities end. So there's certainly a lot to talk about and movement in the right direction, it would seem.
Are the territorial concessions the key sticking point right now for Ukraine?
I would say so. I mean, I think as each of these 20 points is debated, Zelensky will be under a lot of pressure internally not to give up territory, not to give up land, but it seems like there's a plan somewhat at foot to have some kind of demilitarized zone in Ukraine's east, and maybe that could be a compromise that could ultimately be acceptable. These lands in eastern Ukraine previously, before the war, were really the nation's industrial powerhouse, and it's a lot to give up. But I think something's going to give, or something needs to give, and that may be sort of the last and best negotiating chip that Zelenskyy has.
Let's take a deeper dive into one of the top stories this morning. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy is saying a meeting with President Trump will happen, quote, in the near future. This announcement comes after he had what he describes as a good conversation with the U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner. We're joined now by Stephen Carroll, the co-host of Bloomberg Daybreak Europe. Stephen, good morning to you. Is this a particularly hopeful sign?
John, good morning. Yeah, look, this seems to be a sort of string of positivity we've had out in the past couple of days. So not just those most recent comments from Ukraine's President Zelenskyy that he's expecting that meeting with Donald Trump in a couple of days and that a lot can be achieved before the new year. But it comes, as you mentioned, after that phone call yesterday with the envoys, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, and also some commentary we had out of the Ukrainian president just a couple of days ago as well. Now, he's talked about there still being sensitive issues that need to be worked on, but was very key in his own Christmas message that he was working with the American team to understand how everything could be put in place. He talked about the weeks ahead being intensive, and he thanked America for its efforts as well. So the signals are all coming are quite positive. Remember, this is after months of negotiations over these issues as well. So the fact that we're coming towards the end of the year may actually see some movement towards refining that peace plan, which the US, of course, drew up, and Ukraine has been trying to refine since then as well. It started its life as a 28-point peace plan. It's now down to 20, but it's not entirely something that Ukraine is satisfied with either.
Yeah, how conflicted are the goals of Moscow and Kyiv?
Well, I mean, between Moscow and Kyiv, the gap is very far apart. What we know about the US and Ukraine talks, because the choreography of this, as we know it, is that the US and Ukraine are trying to agree on a plan that then they'll present to Vladimir Putin as well. So the key issues that still need to be worked out between the Ukrainian and American negotiators are things particularly around territory, the territorial concessions in the eastern region of Donetsk as well. This is something that Vladimir Putin has been continually pushing for as well. Ukraine, though, opposed to the idea of giving up this territory as well, fearing that it could leave them vulnerable if they had this sort of state in place to something that could be more, open up to a further conflict in the future. The US has talked about this being designated as a free economic or demilitarized zone. And that is really where I suppose the point of difference is over that issue as well. Now, Ukraine has said that giving up any territory would require them to hold a referendum. That potentially complicates issues a little bit further as well. Okay. And of course, they have moved progress on some of the other key issues like the security guarantees, wanting something modelled on NATO's Article 5 common defence provision as well. So there's progress on other issues.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak, your morning podcast on the stories making news from Wall Street to Washington and beyond.
Look for us on your podcast feed by 6 a.m. Eastern each morning on Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else you listen.
You can also listen live each morning starting at 5 a.m. Wall Street time on Bloomberg 1130 in New York, Bloomberg 99.1 in Washington, Bloomberg 92.9 in Boston, and nationwide on Sirius XM Channel 121.
Plus, listen coast to coast on the Bloomberg Business app, now with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto interfaces.
And don't forget to subscribe to Bloomberg News Now. It's the latest news whenever you want it, in 5 minutes or less. Search Bloomberg News Now on your favorite podcast platform to stay informed all day long. I'm Karen Moscow.
I'm John Tucker. Join us again tomorrow morning for all the news you need to start your day right here on Bloomberg Daybreak.